Many of you have expressed enjoyment in watching our videos, and I appreciate that support immensely. However, it has come to my attention that a significant number of you have not yet subscribed to the channel. We are approaching an exciting milestone of hitting 1,000 subscribers, and your involvement could play a crucial role in helping us reach that goal. If you find value in the content we are providing, I kindly ask that you consider hitting that subscribe button and liking this video. Your engagement truly makes a profound difference and directly contributes to our ability to continue producing more engaging and high-quality content for you. Thank you sincerely for taking the time to watch and for your ongoing support. One particular Saturday morning stands out in my memory, beginning like many others. The soft golden hues of sunlight filtered gently through the curtains, softly illuminating our bedroom. I rolled over, expecting to find Linda still asleep beside me as she often was on leisurely mornings. However, the space next to me was unexpectedly cold and empty. The sheets were rumpled, a subtle indication that she had been restless during the night. While this should have been a mundane detail, it sent a ripple of unease through me. I quickly dismissed the thought, convincing myself that her absence was likely due to a late-night binge-watching session or perhaps a personal need for solitude. I made my way to the kitchen, drawn in by the enticing aroma of freshly brewed coffee. I poured myself a cup, taking a moment to relish the warmth radiating from the mug. My thoughts drifted toward the day ahead, filled with errands to run and chores to tackle, and I even contemplated a relaxing afternoon spent with a good book. However, as I glanced at the table, my eyes caught sight of a small slip of paper peeking out from beneath the edge. It was uncharacteristic of Linda to leave notes, especially when everything else seemed perfectly fine. Curiosity gnawed at me as I reached for the note and unfolded it. The note was written in Linda's hurried script, featuring a typical grocery list: apples, bread, milk, a few ordinary items. Yet, beneath that list was a single, unexpected line: "Call David." The simplicity of this message felt like a jagged edge cutting through the calm of my morning. David was an old friend of hers from college. While I never harbored any particular issues with him, the thought of her reaching out to him now twisted my stomach in knots. I tried to brush aside my unease, convincing myself that this was merely a harmless check-in. After all, we had a mutual social circle that included a few people I occasionally contacted without any hidden intentions. Still, as I stood in the kitchen, that knot of unease only tightened within me. I poured another cup of coffee, seeking the comfort of caffeine to fuel my racing thoughts. As the morning stretched on and hours passed, my awareness of Linda's absence deepened. The clock's relentless ticking echoed loudly in the silence, a constant reminder of her continued absence. My mind spiraled into overdrive, conjuring various scenarios. Perhaps she had stepped out for a quick run or met up with friends. However, as I waited, I reflected on the last few weeks. I had noticed subtle changes in her behavior, her phone buzzing frequently, texts she would quickly delete, and an elusive distant look in her eyes when she thought I wasn't paying attention. A growing sense of unease settled around me, enveloping me like a cold fog. I wanted to dispel these feelings, but the seeds of doubt had taken root. Every interaction with her lately had felt charged, as if unsaid words lingered in the air, and the comfortable silence we once shared now felt heavy, weighed down by unvoiced secrets. Finally, I reached for my phone and sent her a quick text: "Hey, where are you? Just checking in." I aimed to appear nonchalant, though the growing worry within me was palpable. Moments ticked by, and when the screen remained stubbornly blank, a flicker of irritation surged within me. I disliked feeling left in the dark. Minutes turned into an hour, and I found myself pacing the kitchen, my thoughts racing. A surge of frustration bubbled up inside me. I was not one to linger in uncertainty, I needed answers. Making a decision, I grabbed my keys and headed out for a drive through our neighborhood, hoping to spot her jogging or perhaps chatting with a neighbor. As I drove through familiar streets, my eyes scanned the surroundings for any sign of her. The sun dipped lower in the sky, casting long shadows across the pavement. I turned down a side street, glancing at the park where we often walked together, but she was nowhere to be found. Instead, a sense of foreboding settled in my gut, amplifying my concerns. By the time I arrived back home, an unsettling feeling had taken root within me, an intensity that I could not dismiss. I felt a pressing compulsion to address the situation that had been weighing on my mind. The longer I allowed the discomfort to linger, the more my thoughts would spiral into elaborate fantasies, each more alarming than the last. Those initial, minor doubts were now evolving into vivid, distressing images of betrayal that fueled a growing mixture of anger and pain deep within me. I reached for my phone once again, scrolling through her messages with growing anxiety. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary, just the usual exchanges filled with mundane discussions about work and our children's activities. However, my heart raced as the realization washed over me: someone could easily mask their true emotions behind a facade of normalcy. The thought gnawed at me. Had I been blind to the signs this entire time? Finally, after what felt like an eternity of agonizing stillness, the front door swung open, and Linda stepped inside. Her cheeks were flushed, and her hair was slightly disheveled, a sight that stirred a tempest of emotions within me. Relief rushed through my veins, but it was immediately tangled with suspicion. Why had she taken so long? What had occupied her time? "Hey," she greeted, her voice bright, perhaps a bit too bright. "Sorry I lost track of time at the farmer's market. Look at these." She held up a bag filled with fresh vegetables and a bouquet of vibrant flowers. Yet, despite the cheerful display, all I could focus on was the faint sheen of sweat on her forehead and the way she averted her gaze. "Did you go alone?" I inquired, striving to keep my tone casual while my pulse quickened in anticipation. "Yeah," she replied, "I wanted to get some fresh produce for dinner tonight." The smile she offered seemed forced, and beneath the surface, I could sense an underlying tension that betrayed her words. "Did you call David?" The question burst forth before I could restrain it, hanging heavily in the space between us. Her smile faltered, and in that fleeting moment, I detected a flicker in her eyes, guilt, perhaps, or surprise. Maybe it was merely my imagination, but it felt as if I had struck a chord deep within her. "David? Why would you think that?" She attempted to laugh, but it fell flat, lacking authenticity. "I haven't spoken to him in years." The reaction she displayed only intensified my suspicions. Was it merely my perception, or did she seem defensive? The feeling that there was something lurking beneath her calm exterior weighed heavily on my mind, as if she were attempting to keep a hidden truth shrouded from me. "It was just a grocery list I found," I said, trying to sound indifferent despite the turmoil within. "You mentioned him." "Oh," she paused, a brief moment of hesitation crossing her face. "I must have written it down ages ago. You know how disorganized I can be." The excuse felt incredibly weak, and I was torn between the desire to push further and the instinct to tread lightly. Here stood the woman I loved, yet an overwhelming sense of disquiet wrapped around my heart, making me feel as though our world was precariously slipping away from view. I turned away, not wanting her to see the doubt and simmering anger that were churning in my chest. Engaging in the preparations for dinner, my movements became mechanical as I chopped vegetables, replaying the conversation over and over in my mind. The words echoed ominously, intensifying my anxiety. What if my suspicions held some truth? What if Linda was indeed hiding something monumental from me? After dinner, I made an effort to spark a conversation with her, but it felt as though I was speaking to a stranger. She was distant, her responses short and unengaged, her mind seemingly somewhere else entirely. The air between us crackled with unspoken tension, a weight that felt suffocating. That night, lying beside her in bed, sleep eluded me. I stared at the ceiling, my mind racing through a myriad of scenarios. The once inconsequential inconsistencies now loomed large and threatening in my thoughts. I remembered the way she would rush through her calls, those late nights spent at work, the secrecy surrounding her phone. Each memory sharpened the ache in my chest, and the nagging question resurfaced, was I losing her? The thought sent a surge of panic through me, it felt too sudden, far too surreal. I should have felt secure and cherished, yet here I was, gripped by a gnawing sense of betrayal that threatened to unravel everything I believed in. I turned on my side, trying to focus on her sleeping form in the dim light. She looked peaceful, a stark contrast to the turmoil roiling inside me. But I could not ignore the doubts that had taken hold, festering like an untreated wound. With each tick of the clock, they multiplied, and with every passing moment, my resolve strengthened. I refused to be a victim of this situation, I could not allow doubt to consume me. If she was concealing something from me, I would uncover the truth. As I lay there, a plan began to solidify in my mind, and I steeled myself for what lay ahead. A comprehensive strategy began to take shape within my mind, becoming increasingly sharp and clear with each passing moment. It would demand not only patience but also precision, and I was fully prepared to assume control over the narrative that had enveloped my life. I felt an unwavering determination to unravel the truth, regardless of how painful that process might be. With this thought firmly established, I finally closed my eyes, a sense of termination steadily settling in. The next day promised to bring a fresh wave of questions, new revelations that could potentially offer me a chance to reclaim my life from the shadows of suspicion that had been looming over me. The ensuing days blurred into a haze of tension and unease, enveloping me in an almost suffocating fog. Every moment was saturated with suspicion, causing my heart to race each time I caught Linda stealing glances at her phone or when she left the room for what felt like an eternity. Each instance tightened the knot in my stomach, serving as a constant reminder of the grocery list that loomed large in my mind, symbolizing her potential betrayal. Our conversations had taken on a forced nature, where every exchange felt like a delicate balancing act, and I became increasingly aware of the fissures forming in the facade of our seemingly perfect life. I endeavored to keep our interactions light and breezy, but every smile seemed to act as a mask, concealing the deeper worries that threatened to disrupt my composure. It became imperative for me to observe her more intently, searching for any signs of something insidious lurking beneath her cheerful exterior. There were moments when I sensed her evasion, the hollow ring of her laughter, the way her eyes darted away when I probed too deeply with my questions. One evening, as we settled into the couch for what was supposed to be a cozy movie night, I prompted her with a casual question about our past. "Remember that trip we took to the cabin?" I asked, hoping to evoke memories that would bring comfort. For a fleeting moment, her smile appeared genuine. "Of course," she replied, reflecting on our shared experience, yet that warmth slipped away as quickly as it had come. As the movie played on, I observed how her attention strayed, her thoughts clearly elsewhere. A sharp pang of disappointment hit me. What could possibly occupy her mind so completely in that moment? "What are you thinking about?" I asked gently, attempting to mask the surge of irritation building within me. "Oh, nothing, just work stuff," she responded with a dismissive wave of her hand, her nonchalance deepening my doubts and further fueling my anxiety. I pressed her further, driven by desperation to catch a glimpse into her thoughts. "What's bothering you?" "Nothing really, Tom. Just tired, I guess," she replied, leaning back on the couch. Yet, I could see her body language tighten, a physical distance emerging that felt palpable, a chasm created by unspoken secrets. As the days stretched into a week, I found myself retreating into my own mind. Each moment I spent away from her was filled with a tumult of conflicting emotions. I felt like a detective in my own home, following a trail of clues that could lead to a shocking revelation. Yet, every time I considered the potential implications, a deeper fear gripped me, the fear that I might uncover something I was simply not prepared to handle. On that fateful Friday, I resolved to take a more proactive approach. Linda had plans to attend a dinner with her book club, and as she left, I remained behind, armed with an urgent determination. I began my investigation by cautiously sifting through her belongings. Guilt washed over me as I contemplated my actions, but my insatiable curiosity and underlying fear outweighed any moral reservations I had. I ventured into our bedroom, my heart pounding as I rifled through her drawers. Initially, I was met with the mundane: clothes, shoes, the usual clutter of everyday life. Just as I was about to give up, my fingers unexpectedly brushed against a small leather-bound notebook concealed at the rear of her nightstand. I hesitated for a moment, grappling with the feeling of being an intruder in my own life, but the overwhelming desire to know the truth propelled me forward. As I opened the notebook, my pulse quickened, scanning the pages filled primarily with grocery lists and mundane reminders. Yet, I soon stumbled upon a section that captured my attention: thoughts, reflections, snippets of dreams scribbled in her handwriting. It felt intimate, yet an uncanny sense of trespass loomed over me, as if I was peering into a sacred space meant only for her. Then, my eyes landed on a list of names, some familiar, others foreign, but one name, in particular, stood out: David. A cold wave of dread washed over me as my heart sank. Why on earth was she writing about him? The remaining entries were interspersed with vague poetic musings that danced around clarity, enhancing the atmosphere of unease. The more I read, the heavier the air felt, thickening with tension. Her writing seemed to hint at frustration, a yearning for escape. I quickly closed the notebook, my hands trembling as I tucked it under my arm. Pacing the room, I was overwhelmed by the conflicting emotions swirling within me. The hunt for the truth had transformed into a tangled web of fears, uncertainties, and an insatiable need to understand the unsettling reality that was unraveling right before my eyes. What was unfolding before me was a distressing scene. My wife, the very woman with whom I had built my life, seemed to be unraveling right in front of my eyes. The realization struck me with an intense weight when Linda returned later that evening, her presence both familiar and distant. In a moment of panic, I hastily shoved the notebook back into the nightstand, my heart racing as I did so. I forced myself to engage in casual conversation, trying to mask the turmoil churning within me. "How was your dinner?" I asked, striving to sound genuinely interested despite the storm of emotions swirling inside me. "Oh, it was great. We discussed the new book, and everyone had such interesting insights," she replied, her excitement seemingly genuine. Yet, I could not afford to let her apparent joy distract me from the troubling truth I was uncovering about her life. "Sounds fun," I managed to respond, though my mind drifted elsewhere, piecing together the fragments of her life that increasingly felt disconnected from my own. After dinner, I attempted to engage her in more casual conversations, probing gently to glean more information. "So what's next on your reading list?" I asked, hoping to find a lead. Oh, I'm not sure. I've been thinking about trying a new genre, she said, her eyes flickering away from mine, a gesture that unsettled me. Like what? I pressed, sensing her avoidance. She simply shrugged, an action too casual for my liking. Maybe something suspenseful. I've heard thrillers are great. As she spoke, a nagging thought crept into my mind. Was there an underlying meaning in her words? Was she hinting at something deeper, a layer of irony that resonated with the growing suspicion I felt? You should read something by Haruki Murakami, I suggested, feeling an instinctive urge to steer our discussion back onto familiar territory. I'll consider it, she replied, her tone light but devoid of conviction. After our conversation, I retreated to the living room, where an inescapable knot of suspicion twisted tighter within me. It dawned on me that I was ensnared in an unsettling web of fear and uncertainty, and I knew it was only going to grow tighter as time went on. The following day, I resolved to do some digging, not just around our home but beyond it. If Linda was hiding something, there had to be a trail that I could follow to uncover the truth. After much contemplation, I decided to reach out to David, trying to keep my intentions shrouded under the guise of casual friendliness. I called him, and to my surprise, he picked up right away. Tom. Good to hear from you. What's up? His cheerful tone masked something ominous lurking beneath the surface. Hey, I just thought it'd be nice to catch up. How have you been? I asked, forcing a relaxed tone into my voice. Busy with work and family, he replied, laughter lacing his voice as if to ease any tension. How's Linda? He asked, the way he spoke her name sending a sharp twinge through me, a test of sorts. She's doing well, just the usual work and book club. As I spoke, I could sense an edge in his response. Determined, I decided to press further. You still see her? I know you two were close back in college. A moment of silence hung between us before he responded, his hesitation palpable. Not really. We've lost touch. You know how life happens. There was an undercurrent to his words, something he left unspoken that only fueled my determination to uncover the truth. Would you be free for a drink sometime? I could use a break, I suggested, hoping to pry more information from him. Sure, I'd like that. How about tomorrow evening, he replied, and I felt a mix of satisfaction and dread wash over me. This was the first tangible step I had taken toward unraveling the truth, yet it felt risky. What if David knew something? What if he was somehow involved in whatever secret Linda was hiding? The mere thought ignited a spark of rage within me. As the day wore on, my resolve only strengthened, though I knew I needed more evidence to back my growing suspicions. I was spiraling deeper into an emotional abyss, a tangled mess that threatened to engulf me completely. Later that evening, after Linda returned from another book club meeting, I steeled myself for a seemingly normal dinner. We sat down together, and I made a conscious effort to maintain an air of normalcy, asking her about her day while inwardly coiling tighter, preparing for the inevitable confrontation I sensed looming on the horizon. How was your day? She inquired, a hint of curiosity weaving through her voice. It was fine, just worked on a few projects, I replied, focusing intently on my food. How about you? Any interesting discussions tonight? Her face brightened at the question, and she launched into an enthusiastic recounting of her evening. But even as she spoke, I felt a growing chasm between us, a distance that spoke volumes about the disconnection that was slowly unraveling the very fabric of our lives together. A palpable sense of distance hung heavily between us, an intangible barrier that I felt was becoming increasingly insurmountable. As the evening drew to a close and we finished our dinner, the tension in the room was nearly suffocating. I could no longer suppress my thoughts. Linda, do you ever think about Dee? I asked, my voice breaking the silence. Instantly, I noticed her eyes widen, a clear signal that my question had caused her to momentarily go still, as if caught in the crosshairs of an uncomfortable revelation. No, not really, she replied, her voice steady but lacking the conviction that one would expect from such a simple question. It was as if a quiet storm was brewing beneath her calm exterior. Undeterred, I felt compelled to push further, to penetrate the growing chasm that separated us. You know, he mentioned you when I spoke to him today, I continued, trying to gauge her reaction. It was as if he hadn't forgotten you at all. Her composure faltered, and I watched as her fork clattered against her plate, the sound reverberating in the charged atmosphere of the room. What did he say? She asked, her voice tinged with an edge of anxiety that could not be concealed. I leaned in closer, intent on deciphering the magic behind her facade. Just that you guys used to be close and that he was glad to hear you're doing well. My words hung in the air, thick with implication, and I could feel the tension crackling like static electricity around us. But it sounded like he was hiding something, I pressed, my curiosity driving me further. Her reaction was immediate. A flicker of panic flashed across her face, momentarily exposing the turmoil hidden beneath her calm surface. "Tom, it's nothing. You know how people are," she responded, her voice strained as though trying to mask the truth that lay just beneath her skin. Yet, my resolve tightened in response to her denial. "Is it nothing, or is it more?" I challenged her. Her expression transformed under the weight of my question, revealing a mix of fear and frustration that I had not seen before. "I don't know why you're digging into this. It was a long time ago." Despite her protests, I felt an urgency rising within me. "Long time ago or not, it feels like there's more to the story," I insisted, the words tumbling out as I sought the truth that lingered in the air between us. Abruptly, she stood, the movement sharp as she pushed her chair back, the noise of it scraping against the floor echoed in the silence that followed. "I need to go for a walk," she declared, and I called after her, my voice reverberating through the empty space she left behind. "Linda." But she was already gone, the door swinging shut behind her with an air of finality. In her absence, I felt a storm building within me, the tight knot of suspicion now twisted into something sharper, more painful. My heart raced, fueled by confusion and anger as I replayed the evening's conversation in my mind. I had attempted to reach out, only to discover that my efforts had pushed her further away, further into the shadows of what I feared was a growing secret. Alone in the stillness, I took a deep breath, attempting to gather my thoughts. Clarity was essential, and I needed a plan. Tomorrow, I would meet David. Perhaps he would hold the key to uncovering the truth that had become a dark cloud over my life. I could no longer let this suspicion fester unchecked. Resolute, I made a decision. I would confront whatever darkness lay ahead, even if it shattered the fragile remnants of trust that still lingered between Linda and me. The truth, no matter how painful, would be my only ally in this twisted narrative of love and betrayal. Morning came, and with it, a renewed sense of purpose. The chaos that had clouded my mind settled into a singular focus. I needed to take action. I had allowed the uncertainty of Linda's actions to loom over me for far too long, paralyzing me in a state of indecision. The time had arrived to stop being passive, to reclaim control over my life, and confront the darkness that lay beneath the surface of our marriage. As I sipped my coffee, reflections on our relationship flowed through my mind like a torrent of memories. I had overlooked countless signs, small details that now appeared glaringly obvious. The late nights she spent at work, her phone buzzing with messages she wouldn't allow me to see, her distracted demeanor, all of it played back in my mind like a disturbing film, each frame revealing another piece of a puzzling narrative I was desperate to complete. It became increasingly clear that the foundation of our relationship had cracks I had refused to acknowledge, and now, I had to face that reality head-on. A stark question loomed over me: could I truly forgive her if she had indeed betrayed me? Or would the need for revenge consume me whole? After placing my cup down, I reached for a pen and notepad, feeling a surge of determination. I began to jot down my thoughts, allowing my hand to move swiftly as I captured each instinct and every desire for action that filled my mind. I needed to gather evidence, to seek concrete proof of Linda's possible infidelity. Mere speculation would no longer suffice. This meant observing her actions more closely, noting her late nights, scrutinizing any unusual behaviors, anything that could provide clarity. Meeting David became imperative. I planned to see him that very evening, but I understood the necessity of caution. I couldn't allow him to sense my suspicions. My goal was to get him talking, to probe for information about Linda. The situation felt like an unwarranted intrusion into her personal space, a blatant invasion of her privacy that left me grappling with conflicting emotions. I recognized that I could not allow sentimental feelings to cloud my judgment or impede my quest for the truth. The desire for clarity outweighed any emotional ties I had, compelling me to confront the unsettling possibility that might lie hidden beneath the surface. Preparation was paramount. I had to equip myself mentally and emotionally for a confrontation if the evidence I uncovered led me down that path. I needed to think meticulously about my approach, ensuring that I did not act on impulse or allow anger to dictate my actions. My objective was not merely to accuse her but to genuinely comprehend the choices she had made, the motivations behind her actions. Furthermore, I wanted her to feel the full weight of what she had done and the implications of her choices. I knew this confrontation could unfold in several ways, and I had to be ready for any eventuality. If Linda was concealing something significant, the encounter could take any number of unexpected turns. She could react with tears, feeling overwhelmed by guilt, become defensive, or adamantly deny everything I presented. Recognizing this unpredictability was crucial. I needed to remain calm and composed, regardless of her reactions or the truth revealed in our conversation. Once I completed my strategic outline and addressed likely scenarios, a surge of determination swept through me. I resolved to avoid adopting a victim mentality in this narrative. I was ready to take charge of my situation, assert my agency, and pursue the truth relentlessly, no matter the costs involved. The hours moved slowly as I anticipated the forthcoming meeting with David. Driving to the bar where we had agreed to meet, my mind churned with a whirlpool of emotions. Anxiety coiled in my stomach, making me uncertain about how our encounter would unfold. Yet, alongside that anxiety was an adrenaline-fueled readiness to plunge into the murky waters of my wife's concealed life. Upon my arrival, I located David sitting at a table toward the back of the bar. A pint of beer rested before him, and he looked up and smiled as I approached. His demeanor exuded friendliness and relaxation, but I could sense an undercurrent of tension beneath that surface. "Tom, glad you could make it," he exclaimed, rising to offer me a firm handshake. "How have you been?" "Busy, you know," I replied, striving to maintain a casual tone despite the brewing storm within me. "Just the usual work and family stuff. How about you?" "I can't complain," he responded, taking a swig of his beer. "Still at the same job, but I've been working on a few side projects." We exchanged light small talk for a while, but my thoughts raced ahead, eager to guide the conversation toward Linda. I needed to navigate this delicately. "I talked to Linda the other day," I remarked, carefully observing his reaction. For a fleeting moment, David's expression flickered, and I couldn't discern whether it was surprise or apprehension. "Oh yeah? How's she doing?" he replied, maintaining a casual front. "Pretty good. She mentioned how much she misses those old times you two shared," I continued, watching him closely for any signs of discomfort. "Yeah, we had some fun back then," he said, his tone light, though there was an undeniable hint of something darker lurking beneath. "College was a blast." I leaned in, attempting to keep my demeanor nonchalant. "It seems like she's still close to you," I suggested. His gaze shifted, and I caught a momentary hesitation that confirmed my suspicions. "Not really. We don't talk much anymore," he replied, and I pushed further, sensing an opportunity. "Really? She mentioned you a couple of times recently. Just curious if you guys still keep in touch." "I think she just talks about old friends sometimes," he stated, though I could see the tension rippling through his posture. "It's nothing. Life gets busy." Frustration surged within me. I needed him to open up and reveal something substantial that could provide the clarity I so desperately sought. "You know, she's been acting a bit different lately," I asserted, trying to convey my concern. "I've noticed changes. Are you sure there's nothing going on?" David's eyes narrowed, and I detected a defensive edge creeping into his voice. "I wouldn't know. I'm not in her daily life. Maybe she's just stressed." Recognizing the need for a shift in tactics, I lowered my voice to a conspiratorial whisper. "Look, David, I know things can get complicated in relationships. If there's something you know, anything, I think it's best to be honest. You were important to her once." He glanced around the bar, a flicker of anxiety flashing across his face. "I really can't say much. I don't want to get in the middle of anything." The conversation felt like it was slipping through my fingers, and I needed to regain control. "I'm just trying to understand what's happening with Linda. I'm worried about her. If she's in trouble, I need to know." The tension in his expression eased somewhat, but he still hesitated. "I don't know, man. She seemed fine the last time we talked." She had seemed perfectly fine the last time we talked. It was a brief conversation, but her demeanor gave no indication of trouble. Yet, during our last encounter, I found myself locking eyes with David, searching for answers. When had that moment occurred? David sighed, his facade of calm beginning to fracture as he recalled the timeline. "A few months ago, maybe," he said, a hint of uncertainty in his voice. "I don't keep track of these things. All I know is that she seemed different." "Different how?" I pressed, wanting to draw out the nuances of his observations. "Just distant, I guess," he replied, taking another gulp of beer. His fingers began to drum on the table, a nervous rhythm that suggested a deeper unease. As the conversation continued, it became increasingly apparent that David was holding back information that he was reluctant to share. I needed to approach this delicately. The last thing I wanted to do was alienate him further. "Look, David, I really appreciate you taking the time to talk to me. I know this must feel awkward, but I genuinely want to ensure she's okay," I said, my tone earnest. David's gaze softened slightly in response, but a cautionary note entered his voice. "Yeah, I understand that. Just be careful not to get too deep into this. Sometimes people need space." It struck me then that there was something significant behind his reluctance, as if he held onto information that could clarify the situation. I felt compelled to coax it out of him. "Do you think she's in any kind of trouble?" I asked, lowering my voice to a steady calm. David shifted in his seat, his expression unreadable. I honestly don't know, Tom. People change, relationships change, he said, his words deliberately vague. You have to be careful. That last comment resonated within me, hitting a nerve I couldn't ignore. Careful how? You're not suggesting she's cheating, are you? I challenged, observing his reaction closely. He appeared momentarily taken aback, but I pressed on. I mean, you know her well enough to have an opinion, right? There was a palpable hesitation in his response, his fingers tapping the table nervously again. I think people do what they think they have to do, he finally said, his words hanging in the air, laden with implications. What does that even mean? I demanded, frustration bubbling beneath the surface. David, if you know something, just tell me. I'm trying to protect my marriage. He leaned back, crossing his arms defensively. I can't be the messenger here, Tom. If she wants to talk about it, that's on her. At that moment, I realized I had reached a dead end, and the realization infuriated me. The weight of unanswered questions pressed heavily upon me, and I recognized the need to regroup, to rethink my approach. All right, fine, I said, my tone shifting to something more conciliatory. Let's drop it for now, but if you hear anything, promise me you'll let me know. Sure, I can do that, he replied, but his voice lacked any conviction. We finished our drinks, the conversation fading into an awkward silence. As I walked away from that meeting, I felt a cocktail of frustration and confusion swirling inside me. I had hoped for more clarity from our discussion, but instead, I was left with more questions than answers. That evening, as I lay in bed, the feeling of impending doom loomed over me. I thought about Linda, the choices she could potentially be making, and how far I was willing to go in order to uncover the truth. I realized I was now standing at a crossroads. The evidence I had collected thus far had only strengthened my determination, but it also brought forth countless unsettling questions. Would I truly be ready for what I might discover? As I drifted into a restless sleep, a sense of resolve began to harden within me. I would confront Linda, but I knew I had to refine my approach carefully. I needed to ensure that my emotions did not cloud my judgment. A plan was necessary, one that would allow me to navigate this labyrinthine situation with clarity. Tomorrow would bring a fresh start, and I would take the first steps toward unearthing the truth about Linda and her secrets. The weight of uncertainty was slightly lifted, replaced by a burgeoning determination to reclaim my life and understand the hidden layers of our marriage. I was ready to confront the unknown, no longer a passive victim but a seeker of truth. The sun rose the following morning, casting a gentle light across the room. The familiar heaviness of determination settled on my shoulders. Today would be pivotal. I needed to gather concrete evidence, undeniable proof that Linda was betraying me. Each small detail I had noted thus far would serve as the foundation for what I was about to uncover. After breakfast, I would casually observe Linda, keeping my eyes peeled for any sign of deception. I casually observed Linda as she went about her morning routine, preparing for work in our kitchen. She moved with a purposeful grace, completely unaware of the storm that raged within me. My gaze followed her as I noted the subtle yet consistent way she kept her phone close at hand, frequently glancing at it as if she were anticipating a notification. This behavior stoked the flames of my suspicions, making my mind race with thoughts of what could be happening beneath the surface of her seemingly normal exterior. I felt a sudden urgency to find a way to access her phone without raising any alarm bells or arousing her doubts. Hey, I need to run some errands today, I said, trying to keep my tone light and casual, masking the tension building inside me. Do you need anything while I'm out? Her response was a brief pause, her eyes flickering to me before she offered a smile that felt rehearsed. No, I'm good, just the usual stuff, but be careful driving, okay? Her reaction struck me as too quick, too calculated, and I nodded, hiding my growing unease beneath a facade of normalcy. The errand I had planned seemed simple, a trip to the local coffee shop where I could not only observe Linda's behavior but also swing by her office later in the day to gather more information. However, beneath this mundane task lay more complex intentions. The bullet point of my day was overshadowed by the anxiety creeping in, urging me to find out if my suspicions had any truth. I couldn't allow Linda to control the narrative of our lives any longer. After leaving the house, I found myself driving aimlessly for a while, the weight of uncertainty heavy on my shoulders. This was a dangerous line I was walking, but the need for clarity propelled me forward. I had to uncover the truth. Pulling into the coffee shop parking lot, I stepped inside and ordered a drink, then settled into a discreet corner table where I had an unobstructed view of the entrance. My plan was to sit and wait, ready to observe the comings and goings of those who entered, knowing that for now, patience was key. Minutes stretched on, unsettling my nerves as I watched each new customer walk through the door. Each time the bell above the entrance jingled, my heart raced with the hope that it would be her. Finally, she appeared. Linda walked in with a bright smile that lit up her face, chatting animatedly on her phone. A wave of dread settled in my stomach, a familiar knot tightening as I realized how at ease she seemed. Her laughter rang out, a sound that felt like a knife twisting deeper into my gut. Trying to keep my emotions in check, I pulled out my own phone, pretending to scroll through social media while keeping a watchful eye on her. She appeared completely engrossed in her conversation, casually tossing her hair back as she tilted her head and laughed, clearly enjoying whatever was being discussed on the other end of the line. Anger surged within me at the sight of her carefree demeanor. It felt like a betrayal just to witness it. In that moment, my gut instinct kicked in. I needed to get closer to eavesdrop on her conversation. After a few minutes of feigning disinterest, I rose from my seat, casually walking in the direction of the restroom. As I passed her table, the conversation continued, but I couldn't catch the words she was saying, and it drove me mad. I reached the restroom and paused just outside, pretending to check my watch while I anxiously awaited the right moment to slip back toward her table. That's when I heard it, a name, clear and unmistakable, David. My heart raced in disbelief. I hadn't imagined it. Linda was talking to him. The realization struck me like a slap to the face, leaving me momentarily stunned. I leaned in slightly, straining to catch more of the conversation unfolding before me. "I know I've told him we're just friends," she said in a low, conspiratorial voice. "But he doesn't understand. I need to keep him in the dark." Those words cascaded over me like ice water, paralyzing my thoughts. She was actively deceiving me in a way I had never anticipated. A tornado of emotions surged through me, betrayal, rage, and confusion. I felt my fists clench instinctively at my sides, overwhelmed by the realization of her duplicity. I couldn't stay there any longer. I had to remove myself from this painful scene before she caught sight of me. The heavy weight of her deceit sat heavily on my chest as I slipped out of the coffee shop and into the cool air outside, feeling a wave of nausea wash over me. My stomach twisted painfully as I grappled with the implications of what I had just heard. Processing this newfound knowledge was imperative, and I needed to adjust my approach accordingly. The plan I had crafted no longer sufficed. This revelation altered everything. Confronting Linda without fully understanding the depth of her betrayal was not an option. I had to gather more evidence and establish a clearer picture of the situation before making any definitive moves. The rest of the day blurred into a chaotic whirlwind of emotions as I wrestled with the implications of Linda's actions. Methodical thought processes began to take precedence over raw anger. I needed clarity. The stakes had risen dramatically, compelling me to delve into Linda's social media and email accounts. I hesitated at first, feeling an unsettling guilt about invading her privacy. However, the gravity of the situation pushed me to prioritize the need for understanding. Once home, I knew what I had to do. The stakes had risen significantly, and clarity was now more essential than ever. Upon returning home, a wave of anxiety washed over me as I made my way to the computer we shared. My heart raced uncontrollably as I logged in. The screen flickered to life, illuminating a wallpaper that showcased a moment from happier times, us at the beach, laughing and seemingly invincible. This image, once a source of joy, now felt like a cruel joke, a stark reminder of the depth of my current turmoil. I had to push aside the nostalgia that threatened to overwhelm me and concentrate on the critical task at hand. I navigated to her email, noting with a mix of trepidation and relief that she had saved her password in the browser. As I delved into her inbox, the heartbeat in my chest thundered like war drums, each keystroke amplifying the tension. I began by sifting through her recent messages, searching for any clues that could lead me to the truth. Hours slipped away as I scoured countless emails, frustration building with each passing minute. It was during this exhaustive search that I stumbled upon a message from David, dated just a few days prior. The sight made my breath catch in my throat. My hands trembled slightly as I clicked it open. The content of the message was a jarring array of emotions: "Can't wait to see you again," "I miss you," and others that suggested a connection far beyond mere friendship. A potent mix of disbelief and fury surged through me as I continued to read. Linda hadn't just been maintaining a platonic relationship, she had been nurturing something much more intimate, something that felt like a betrayal to the core of our relationship. This was not simply an act of infidelity, it was a calculated manipulation. She had been living a double life, concealing her true feelings behind a mask of normalcy. A wave of anger engulfed me, and a strong urge for confrontation surged within. I realized I needed to address this issue head-on, to confront her and catch her off guard. Yet, as I read further into the messages, additional revelations unfolded. There were specific references to secret rendezvous and plans made in hushed tones. The weight of this new information threatened to drown me. The situation felt increasingly overwhelming. I understood that if I were to confront her at this moment, I needed to have all my facts lined up perfectly. My approach needed to be strategic, designed to expose her lies without losing my composure. As the afternoon slipped into evening, I steeled myself for the difficult confrontation that lay ahead. My resolve solidified, I would prepare meticulously. I decided that when Linda returned home, I would act as if everything were normal. It was crucial to keep her off balance, to allow her to continue her routine without any inkling of the storm brewing beneath the surface. This required time to formulate my next steps, to devise a plan that would catch her off guard. That evening, I immersed myself in preparing dinner, mechanically going through the motions while my mind churned with anger and confusion. I was determined to maintain a calm exterior, but inside, I felt like a pressure cooker, seconds away from exploding. When she finally walked through the door, I greeted her with an unnaturally casual smile, a facade of warmth masking the turmoil within me. We exchanged pleasantries over dinner, the conversation strained and filled with an unspoken tension that thickened the air between us. I observed her, searching for any indication of guilt or hesitation that might slip through her carefully constructed demeanor. "Long day?" I asked, probing lightly while my inner turmoil raged. "Just the usual," she replied, her smile bright yet her eyes momentarily darting away. That brief flicker was telling, a fleeting glimpse of uncertainty that ignited the suspicion simmering in my mind. I pressed on, "Anything interesting happen?" My tone remained deceptively light, even as I felt myself boiling inside at the thought of the deceit beneath her surface. "Not really," she said, but I couldn't ignore how her gaze shifted, a telltale sign that she was concealing something. The dinner progressed, the only noise punctuating the silence being the clinking of cutlery. I focused intently on her, attempting to decode every fleeting emotion that crossed her face. With calculated casualness, I asked, "Did you talk to David today?" Her reaction was immediate, a slight stiffening of her posture, a tightening of her grip on the fork that betrayed her composure. "David? No, I didn't. Just some old friends from college," she replied, but I leaned back, studying her intently. "Oh, I thought I saw that he reached out to you." I noted that she faltered slightly, a flash of something inscrutable crossing her face. "Maybe, but I haven't talked to him in ages," she added, her tone lacking conviction. Recognizing her hesitation, I seized the moment to apply pressure. "You know, I ran into him the other day." He seemed eager to catch up. I watched the flicker of concern in her eyes as they darted to meet mine. "Oh, that's interesting," she said, her voice momentarily betraying her composure. "Yeah, I think he misses those times." "Maybe you should reach out," I suggested, observing as the color drained from her face for just a second. "Sure, maybe," she replied, but the uncertainty in her voice confirmed the tension crackling between us, revealing the fragile state of our relationship and the weight of the secrets hanging in the air. Her tone lacked conviction, a subtle yet telling sign of the turmoil brewing beneath her calm exterior. The tension crackled in the air between us, a silent acknowledgement of the unspoken truth that hovered just out of sight. As the evening wore on, I could feel a rush of adrenaline coursing through my veins, awakening a sense of urgency within me. The confrontation I had been anticipating was imminent, and I could feel it deep within my bones. I was determined to expose her, to pull back the curtain on the elaborate charade she had crafted with such meticulous attention to detail. Later that night, as we prepared for bed, a renewed determination surged within me. I realized I needed to finalize my approach. This required more than a mere reaction to her words. I had to plan each move carefully, ensuring she understood that I was not just a victim caught in her web of deception. I was a man on a mission, intent on uncovering the truth. As I lay in bed, my mind wrestled with the impending confrontation. It would change everything, and I knew there was no turning back once the truth was revealed. Finally, I would have the answers I sought, the clarity that had eluded me for far too long. My thoughts spiraled into a whirlwind of emotions, each one more intense than the last. I drifted into a restless sleep, my mind racing with anticipation for what lay ahead, the truth hidden in the shadows of my wife's betrayal. When dawn broke, I awoke early, the anticipation bubbling beneath my skin like a pot on the verge of boiling over. The plan I had devised was firmly in place, and I could feel an undeniable surge of power coursing through me as I prepared for my confrontation with Linda. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the culmination of my doubts, my investigations, and the painful discoveries that had unfolded in the wake of her deceit. As I moved through the morning routine, each action felt deliberate and calculated. I poured coffee, mindful of the warmth flowing into the mug, and tried to keep my expression neutral when Linda joined me at the table. She looked beautiful as always, but today, that beauty seemed to act as a mask, concealing something dark and twisted beneath the surface. "Morning," she said cheerfully as she reached for a slice of toast. "Morning," I replied, keeping my tone even. I observed her closely, noticing the way her fingers grazed the edge of her phone, always nearby, always waiting for something or someone. The tension in the air was thick, almost palpable. Each passing minute felt like an eternity as we sat together in silence, the clinking of silverware underscoring the growing unease between us. The weight of my resolve pressed down on me, urging me to act. "Do you have any plans today?" I asked, attempting to sound casual. Linda looked up, a flicker of surprise crossing her features. "Just the usual errands," she replied. I leaned back, forcing a casual smile. "Just curious. I thought maybe we could do something together later, reconnect a bit." Her smile faltered for a fraction of a second, but she quickly recovered. "Sure, that sounds nice. Maybe we can catch a movie." My heart twisted at her nonchalance. "Yeah, we'll see. Just remember to keep your phone on you, in case something comes up." The hint of a challenge hung between us, and I noted the flicker of confusion on her face. After breakfast, I excused myself to take a shower, using the time to steady my nerves. In my mind, I vividly pictured the confrontation, imagining her reaction as I laid out the evidence. My heart raced as I envisioned the shock and denial on her face, the fragile facade shattering before me. When I stepped out, I felt prepared, dressed in a clean shirt as a reminder of the man she had once loved, a man not defined by her betrayal. As the day progressed, I busied myself with mundane tasks, waiting for Linda to return home. I had already placed the printouts of her email conversations with David in a conspicuous spot on the dining room table, ready to be seen. I wanted the revelation to hit her with all the force of a thunderclap. Finally, the clock struck 6, and I heard the familiar sound of her keys jingling in the lock. My heart raced as she stepped through the door, her smile brightening the dim entryway. "Hey, I'm back," she said, tossing her purse onto the counter. "Welcome home," I replied, keeping my voice steady, suppressing the urge to lash out. "How was your day?" "It was good. Just the usual errands." Her reply was casual, but beneath the surface, I sensed the tension that had been building. Today was the day I would unmask her, and finally, the truth would emerge from the shadows. "It was just a typical day, filled with the usual errands," she replied, dismissively shrugging off her coat as she entered the living room. As she did so, I felt a rush of adrenaline flood through my veins. The moment I had been anticipating was drawing near. I gestured casually toward the dining table, where I had left something for her to examine. Her brow furrowed, revealing a mixture of curiosity and apprehension as she stepped forward and glanced down at the printouts laid out before her. "What's this?" she asked, her tone revealing uncertainty. "Just some emails," I said, carefully choosing my words, each intended to penetrate her facade of calm. "I thought you might want to see them." As she picked up the papers, her expression began to shift from curiosity to confusion as she absorbed the information contained within. I watched her face drain of color as the gravity of the situation settled in. "Tom, what is this?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I took a step closer, feeling my heart pound fiercely in my chest. "You tell me, Linda. It looks like you've been keeping some secrets." Her hands trembled as she dropped the papers back onto the table, her eyes darting up to meet mine with an intensity that belied the panic creeping into her voice. "This isn't what you think," she stammered, desperation etched across her features. "Really?" "Because it looks pretty clear to me," I shot back, my frustration spilling over and unable to contain the rage that was boiling within me. "You've been lying to me for years. You told me David was just a friend, but these emails suggest something entirely different." "Tom, please let me explain," she pleaded, the desperation in her voice becoming increasingly palpable. "Explain what?" "How you've been living a lie." I raised my voice, the tension between us escalating to a breaking point. "You've been hiding behind a facade while planning a future with him." "I didn't plan anything with him," she protested vehemently, shaking her head as if to deny the very reality I had laid before her. "You don't understand what was happening. I was scared. I thought I could handle it on my own." "Scared?" I echoed incredulously. "Scared of what exactly?" "The truth. Because that's the one thing I've wanted from you." Tears welled in her eyes, and my anger surged again as I recognized the vulnerability beneath her hardened exterior. "You don't get it, Tom. I thought I was doing what was best for you, for us." I let out a bitter laugh, the sound tinged with disbelief. "You disappeared without a word and then returned as if nothing happened. What about the damage you've caused? Do you think I can just forget all of this?" "I was trying to protect you," she shouted back, her voice cracking with emotion. "I thought if I left, it would be easier for both of us. I thought I was saving us." My heart ached with conflicting emotions, betrayal, anger, sorrow. I had built my life around the love I believed we shared, only to find it crumbling before my eyes like dust in the wind. So you thought that running away was the solution? Faking your own death? It wasn't like that, she insisted, her voice trembling with intensity. I was in a situation I didn't know how to escape. David was becoming a threat, and I had to leave. Leave or just run into the arms of the man you claimed was just a friend. I shot back, my words laced with pain. Tom, I had no choice. I was scared, and I didn't know what to do. I thought I was protecting you from the fallout. I shook my head, feeling the anger morph into a deep-seated pain. Protecting me? This isn't protection, Linda. This is betrayal. There we stood, locked in a standoff, the air thick with unresolved tension. I saw a flicker of truth in her eyes, a truth that pierced my heart. There was more to her story, layers of complexity that had yet to be revealed. Tell me everything, I demanded, my voice steady but firm. I want to know why. I want to know what pushed you to this. Linda took a deep breath, the weight of her choices crashing down upon her like a tidal wave. It's complicated, Tom. When I was with David, I didn't see the darkness until it was too late. I thought I could manage it, but it spiraled out of control. I was terrified, and then I met someone who offered me a way out. I had to disappear. And now, after all these years, why come back? I pressed, my anger still simmering just beneath the surface. Because I had a child, she whispered, tears spilling down her cheeks. I thought if I kept running, I could protect both of you. But it didn't work. I was wrong to think I could handle it alone. I need help now, Tom. I need you. The admission hung heavily in the air between us, suffocating and profound. My heart sank, fully aware of the emotional turmoil swirling within me, caught in a struggle between the anger that had taken root and the undeniable love that still lingered beneath the surface of the hurt. It was a contradictory state of being. I felt betrayed yet bound by the remnants of affection that had once flourished between us. You should have trusted me with the truth, I thought bitterly. You should have let me decide how to handle it instead of keeping it hidden. As her sobs echoed in the room, she confessed her selfishness, admitting that she didn't want to burden me with her troubles. I could hear the weight of her regret in her voice, a realization that seeped deeper than mere words. I see now how much I've hurt you, she continued, her voice trembling, and I never wanted this. I thought I could be strong enough to make it all go away. As her words hung in the air, I felt the walls I had meticulously constructed around my heart begin to crack. Anger still coursed through my veins, burning fierce and bright, but beneath it lay an overwhelming well of sadness and betrayal that echoed the love I once felt for her. What do we do now? I wondered, grappling with the enormity of the situation. She stepped closer, her eyes searching mine, pleading for understanding. We have to face it together, she insisted softly. I know I've hurt you, and I understand if you can't forgive me, but please let me explain everything. Inside me, turmoil swelled, pushing me to the brink of a decision that felt monumental. I could choose to push her away and drown in my feelings of betrayal, or I could listen and allow the possibility of healing to seep through the cracks of my guarded heart. I felt a tremor in my voice as I spoke the words that seemed to hang heavily in the air. I don't know if I can trust you again, I admitted, the weight of my pain evident in my tone. Linda reached out with a trembling hand, her palm resting over mine in a gesture of both vulnerability and hope. I'll do whatever it takes to prove to you that I'm different now, she promised, her gaze intense and earnest. The rawness of the moment enveloped us, the tension crackling between us like electricity in the air. I could see the fear reflected in her eyes, and for the first time, I began to glimpse the depth of her regret. I understood, in that instant, the tremendous weight of her choices pressing down on her, shaping the person she had become. Tell me everything, I repeated softly, urging her to lay bare her truth. Let's start from the beginning. As she began to speak, her words spilled out like a river breaking through a dam, unspooling the tangled web of lies that had separated us. She revealed the truth that lay behind her choices, the fears that had driven her to flee from the life we had built together, and the secrets she had kept hidden in the shadows of her heart. In this unexpected confrontation, a reckoning unfolded, shifting the narrative from one of betrayal to one that embraced redemption, resilience, and the challenging journey toward healing. The weight of her truth settled between us, hinting at a new beginning, a mutual understanding that both of us had desperately needed. As Linda laid bare her truth, the room felt lighter, almost as if the oppressive air had begun to dissipate. Each word she spoke peeled back layers of misunderstanding and resentment that had festered between us for far too long. My heart ached for the woman I once loved, even as the scars of betrayal throbbed beneath the surface. I listened intently as she recounted her struggles, her feeling of being cornered by her choices, and how fear had driven her into silence, isolating her from everything that once mattered to her. Something shifted within me in that moment. No longer was I merely the aggrieved husband, I was a man grappling with the complexity of human frailty and the imperfections that come with it. I had spent years constructing a narrative around our relationship, one that was painfully black and white, but now I was beginning to see the shades of grey that filled the spaces in between. "Tom, I never meant to hurt you," Linda pleaded, her voice cracking with emotion. "I thought I was protecting you from the chaos I created, but I see now that all I did was compound the damage." The conflict within me churned violently. "You could have trusted me," I said, frustration coloring my words. "I could have helped you, I needed the truth, Linda, no matter how difficult it was to bear." Her eyes shimmered with unshed tears as she responded, her voice low and filled with regret. "I know, and I wish I could take it all back. If I could just rewind time, I would. But life doesn't grant do-overs," she concluded with a deep sigh. I swallowed hard, feeling a lump in my throat that felt as heavy as a stone. "What about your child?" I asked, my voice steady but tinged with concern. "What will happen now?" She hesitated, the weight of the moment seemingly pressing down on her, before finally sighing deeply. "I don't want to burden you with this, but I want to bring him home," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I need you to understand that he's innocent in all of this. I've kept him hidden for too long, away from everything and everyone I love. I want a chance to make it right." A wave of emotion washed over me, a secret child, a life I had no idea existed. The notion struck me with a bewildering mix of sorrow and disbelief. "You mean David is the father?" I asked, stunned. "No," she exclaimed, shaking her head vehemently. "I was involved in a relationship that was brief and troubled, characterized by mistakes that I made despite my genuine attempts to do what I thought was right. The story that unfolded was both intricate and tragic, yet I could sense that the pieces of our lives were beginning to align in some manner. This situation was not simply a matter of infidelity or betrayal, it was deeper, rooted in the complexities of survival and the paralyzing fear that had gripped us both. As I looked into her eyes, I recognized a haunted expression, one that stirred a pang of empathy within me, slicing through the bitterness I had harbored for so long. "Linda," I said carefully, choosing my words with precision, "we cannot change what has happened in the past. However, if you are open to it, I believe we can embark on a new journey together, as partners." The mention of a fresh start seemed to soften her gaze, and I noticed a flicker of hope ignite within her, illuminating the shadows that had loomed over us. "You mean that you would truly be willing to support me?" she asked, her voice a mixture of skepticism and longing. "I can't say that I can completely forgive you right now, but I will not abandon you, especially when there is a child involved." Tears fell silently down her cheeks, her emotions spilling forth as she reached out for my hands, grasping them tightly as if seeking reassurance. "Thank you, Tom. You have no idea how much this means to me," she said, her voice trembling with gratitude. "I promise I will do everything I can to make things right." We fell into a contemplative silence, the weight of our revelations hanging heavily in the air. The road ahead was shrouded in uncertainty, yet amidst the ambiguity, I began to sense the outline of a new beginning forming. In the days that followed, Linda and I embarked on the challenging process of rebuilding our lives and our relationship. We dedicated hours to talking, sharing memories, and confronting the painful truths that had kept us apart for so long.